and welcome back to another episode of the Dylbozer's Den. Today we're going to be discussing a death metal record that was released recently through 20 Buck Spin, the debut full length from the UK's own Slimelord. It is Chytridiomycosis Relinquished. Try pronouncing that 3 times fast. Also pronouncing some of these song titles. This band has released many EPs prior to this album and even a live record. I think what everyone's going to notice immediately about this record is the artwork, which is directly over here to my left. And there's even a Worm album, Foreverglade, that's over here to my left that the same artist did the artwork for. That would be Brad Moore, who is also known for doing Gatecreeper's Deserted, as well as Two Mold's Manner of Infinite Forms. One thing I love about the 20 Buck Spin label is generally every act that is on that roster has great artwork and puts a lot of detail into that. And something about the packaging of this record and all the different vinyl variants they do is just so perfect to me. Good label as well. Has a lot of different acts on it. A lot of death metal, black metal, doom-centric acts. And I know myself and co-host Austin Paulson have been a big fan of that label for many, many years. But let's get back to this record. A 5-piece lineup. You've got John Riley on bass, Ryan Shepperson on drums, Alexander Bradley on guitars, vocals, and lyrics. I believe he might be the primary lyricist of this band. And if you know anything about it, chytridiomycosis is a fungal infection that affects amphibians. The whole record is kind of oriented around this fungal infection and has this huge kind of concept around it that I can't even grasp all the way through. The album actually comes with kind of a description of what's going on in the concept, and it's not easy to write any form of music around a concept like that. So kudos to these guys for doing that, and kudos for someone taking the reins and going, hey, here's this concept, here's what I want to do, let's tie the artwork into it. It's not an easy thing to do. Andrew Ashworth on vocals does a fantastic job, definitely does the gurgle and the low gut-wrenching thing, very reminiscent of Nespith by Demilich from Finland. I get a lot of that, and I get a lot of that style with a lot of the bands on 20 Buck Spin. Not to say that that's a bad thing, not to say that that's overarching through all of them, but that's a very influential band from the early 90s that really started the whole gurgle vocal thing that we're very familiar with now in the death metal genre. And then you've got Christian Zamoski on guitar. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. And if not, my apologies. 5-piece band doing a great job on this. This is a pretty varied album. It's not just straightforward death metal. It's cavernous. It's open. It's atmospheric. There's textures to it. To me, being a bass player alone, standout performance on this is John Riley on bass. There is just bass sounds and there are effects all over this record. I can hear chorus. I can hear maybe some delay at certain times, maybe even a flange. You don't get that a lot with death metal. Usually a death metal bass player is kind of buried in the mix. And if they are standing out, they're still playing the supporting role and you hear them. They're present. But this guy definitely takes a little bit more from probably some progressive rock acts as well as some shoegaze, as well as some post-punk stuff and the type of bass effects that you're hearing. Kudos to him. That's the most interesting thing on the record to me, just because I'm a bass player. Kind of going back to our Sean Ingram episode that we did where he got into Tool based off the bass playing. This is now a bass band to me. It's always going to be that way. So anything this band releases, I'm really set forth with. Not only are you getting a death metal record out of this, with my mention of the Demilich album, Nespith, and the influences from that. I'm sure there are many other influences, but that's the first thing that hit me in the head. But I also hear a lot of the Peaceville 3, and that's not just due to the UK connection, but I can hear Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride, Anathema on here a lot with some of their early records. Definitely more space. You could even throw Disembowelment in there. I can definitely hear those big, open, just dirgy kind of chords, but I can also hear the way the riffs are written. And I could be completely wrong, but that's what I hear. I also hear a little bit of typo negative in the instrumental track, Heroic Demise, which might be the easiest track on the album to pronounce. But in that opening riff, that sounds like everything dies. The opening dirge riff and everything dies. May not have been written that way, may not have been intentional, but it definitely, if you put it under a microscope, it's there. You know, I do want to get really serious for a moment. There's something that opens up this album that we should all be aware of, and hopefully the band knows what they've gotten themselves into. The first sound you hear on here are geese honking, and as Many of us know geese are not meant to be fucked with. They're the most terrifying animal in the animal kingdom. I don't know what type of deal with the devil they had to sign to get that goose on here, or what type of rights they owe to that goose, but they better be very careful. You don't mess with a goose. If a goose is in your yard, he now owns your yard and your house. I don't know what these guys are going to do with this, but I wish them luck. Speaking on the track, The Beckoning Bell, great debut track from this band, a band that I'd never heard of. Definitely sets up the record the way it should. My favorite track on the record, however, is going to be brutally impossible to pronounce, and I hope I get it right, so I'm going to read it right off my notes here. It is Batrick Morpha Resurrection Chamber. That is definitely a track where you hear more of the doom and kind of droning influences there, as well as some bass effects coming in that I really like. But that's the track that really does it for me. Hopefully you enjoy this record as much as I did. Hopefully you can pronounce it better than I can. I'm talking about Slimelord Chytridiomycosis Relinquished, out on 20 Bucks Bin. Thank you guys for joining me once again.